Welcome, everybody. So, today's talk is going to be why you should stop writing checks that your app can't cash. My name is Rogier Trempe, and I'm representing UXCam, which is the world's leading platform for mobile app session replay, working with many of the world's largest brands. This talk today is going to be about the top 4 conversion killers for your mobile apps, but for many others as well. So let's dive right into it. If you have any questions, you can actually ask our team in the chat. We're going to have some engagement on the poll too, so feel free to ask away. Great. Now, the world of mobile is changing, and it's changing really fast. It feels like every single month, either Apple or Google is rolling out another update. And we have to keep up with every single one of these updates. But one overall trend that we're seeing is that they're messing with our marketing funnel. Now, you've probably seen all the other talks today about mobile advertising, acquisition, ASO, install attribution, but this is potentially going to get harder. More recently, we see the limit ad tracking being rolled out. And there's a good chance that this is going to lead to less reliable attribution models and less reliable advertising targeting. And if that happens, we're going to see an increase in customer acquisition cost. So at the top of the funnel, they're both going to start squeezing, and they'll take a bigger cut of the pie. And on install attribution and ad fraud, there's a good chance that we're going to have less insights to determine how we're going to target. So for many of you, this will not be a problem because ideally you have a higher lifetime value than a customer acquisition cost. But what happens when acquisition costs go up? What can we do? I'm here to tell you, you can do a lot. You can increase activation and you can increase retention. Now, where we're going to focus today is on the activation and the retention part of the funnel. So probably many of you will say, we're good. We're good. We got this. But there's 87% of organizations that say the same thing. We have good or even great user experience. But when you ask the same users, only 8% of them is going to agree. That's kind of a gap. And it's natural. You're not the only ones. But it's something you really have to start thinking about, especially as the funnel gets narrower and narrower. And if you combine this with the fact that 1/3 of your users will literally never come back to your app and will probably not engage with your brand anymore if you give them a single bad experience. Bad experiences are not an option for your brand. Now, at UXCam, we have a simple motto. You see it, you fix it. We help mobile companies build better app experiences faster. We're currently live on over 19,000 apps across both app stores. We capture hundreds of billions of data points every single month, and we have 70% of the market of mobile app session replay. Now, why is this? It's because we have one of the best platforms out there. We combine mobile app session replay, heat maps, journey analytics, crash and freeze monitoring, and push notifications all in one. And that gives you a competitive edge when it comes to activation and retention. So with all those customers that we have, let's go into detail on some of them and share the top 4 conversion killers for your mobile app that we have discovered. And these are based on true mobile stories. So conversion killer number 1, don't mess up that first onboarding. The first impression is so important. If you mess it up, most users won't give you a second chance. It really is that first interaction that you have with an app, with a brand, that determines how likely you are to continue with them. It's like a first date. You mess it up, you're probably not going to get invited for a second one. Now, what happens if you do? You're going to end up with a lot of zombie installs. People that have your app on their phone, but just don't use it. No matter how many push notifications you send, they just don't want to engage anymore. So we have a pretty cool customer called Costa Coffee, which is a Coca-Cola company that has an app for customer loyalty. And they saw that they had pretty significant registration drop-offs. They would see new users drop out mostly either on the first or the last screens of the onboarding. And given that loyalty app users spend about 2.7 times more than average yearly on Casa products, this is kind of important. They need to get people into this loyalty state. So, what did they do? They started like everybody else does. They asked the question, why are our users dropping off? And they decided to start to investigate. View session recordings of users that weren't completing steps that were dropping off. They then were able to see what actions are these users taking, identify actions, events, things that they can correlate to drop-offs. And once they started to do this, they could gather evidence of the issues that customers were actually facing in real life in their app. And by tagging and selecting, they were able to quantify the losses to the business, which, given that we know this is so valuable to the company, were significant. And then, using this indisputable video evidence, they were able to prioritize the onboarding over other features. And this led to a 15% increase in loyalty program registrations. That sounds like a small number, but it has a huge impact because this compounds over time. So, what were the key learnings that they discovered? First and foremost, on mobile, users don't like special characters. It's not easy. You don't want to do that hashtag or pound. So, users really want to have a simple login or sign up functionality. So, just use the Apple login or use the Google login or other single sign on providers. Second, front loading all of the onboarding events might be a bit too much. You don't want to get into all of it straight away. There's timing, there's tact. Asking users to enter their club card right at the very start might be a little premature because that person is most likely really dying for coffee and they need their caffeine, so they're going to be grumpy and they want it fast. So just make it easy. And then third, mistimed marketing pop-ups. Prompting members for club membership on the final screen of registration. They haven't even seen what they get in return. They don't really have a good reason to sign up just yet. So, pretty key learnings that are easy to implement and have a huge value to the onboarding. So, question for the audience. How are you improving your onboarding experience? Are you analyzing funnel drop-offs? Are you performing user testing? Maybe you're using in-app surveys, or are you watching session recordings? I'll give everyone a few seconds to respond. Cool. Let's continue to conversion killer number 2. Now, friction on key user paths. Your users are likely to take particular paths within your app. They engage with it all the time. And any kind of friction that they discover on that key user path is going to be really annoying for them, especially if you have to redo it over and over. So this kills your conversions on retention and engagement. One of our customers, Housing.com, one of the main retail platforms in India, has an app that allows people to search for different properties. But they saw that their retention was decreasing over time. And despite the constant addition of new features and functionalities, they still saw that retention rates were steadily dropping. Not a good sign. So they started to look, what is the most engaged feature in our app? It's the search bar, the first thing that people use, but it's like a portal. One tap, and it has to do everything magically. That's tough. So they decided for a new search bar feature update. And before they did this, they started to investigate. So, what are the goals that we have for this search bar? What is the intended usage? Let's track for conversion, engagement, and other metrics. Then next, they started to create user behavior hypotheses, looking at how people are actually behaving, and then seeing what might be unfulfilled needs or identified frustrations that we can resolve in a new update. After this, they started to collect, tag, and collate evidence, just recordings of the actual in-app user behavior. Now, I have to mention, Housing.com had tried this before with user research in a lab, but they had never been able to successfully understand what was really frustrating their users. They believed it was biased. And this actually led the product team to disregard a lot of that research. Now, with indisputable video evidence, they were able to feed real user insights back into the product team. And they were able to revamp the entire search bar with record speed, focusing on issues that actually matter to their users. With 5 million installs, they were able to increase search bar usage and engagement by 100%. That's a significant number. Some of the key learnings that they got were, first and foremost, the default settings were not very intuitive. So users were constantly adjusting the filtering, and this resulted in a lot of rage tapping and a lot of annoyances on trying to get things set up effectively. Secondly, there were no multi-city filters. Seems like an obvious one, but users were constantly adding a city, removing a city, adding a city, removing a city, adding a city, removing a city. And that's pretty frustrating if you're trying to find for multiple cities. So users were really struggling with this. Fixing this had a massive impact, and there's probably more opportunities still to come. So another question, how are you reducing friction? How are you determining new features? Are you tracking reviews? Maybe you're asking for user feedback, or you're monitoring for frustration signals, or perhaps you're reviewing your support interactions. I'll give you another few seconds to answer, or if you have other ideas, feel free to throw them in the comments. Great. So let's continue on our path. Conversion killer number 3. Not all users are created equal. Listen to your most important users to discover what really engages them. It's easy to just focus on the big numbers and to look at the user base as one whole. But really, they're all individuals. They're people. They're you, they're me, they're your sister, your mother, they're everyone, all kinds of people. So don't treat them all the same. One of our customers, Inspire Fitness, had a symptom. They saw engagement was dropping pretty quickly. Users just weren't completing their workouts, even after signing up. And they noticed that the total time spent in the app was relatively low. Now, Inspire Fitness, for those of you who don't know them yet, they offer gym equipment with an app, which is really cool. if nobody's using the app, that makes it a little tricky. So they decided to investigate. They started, as usual, with exploring real user behavior, discover how they were using it, looking at the heat maps, session recordings, which loops they might be engaging with, and then they quite quickly zoomed in on their most engaged users, the real power users. And they discovered that those power users were not looking for instructors, but for workouts. And Inspire Fitness had built their entire content around the instructors. So that led to a pretty interesting hypothesis. What if we switch it around? And they decided to test this with a new content strategy. They provided a new content category focused on workouts first and trainers second. Quickly tested, but massively impacting. They immediately discovered that this was increasing signups, sessions, and time spent in app. And they decided to double down on this, which led to 181% of new user signups, 415% more in-app sessions, and 460% more time spent in app. Those are impressive numbers. Now, they were even able to use these learnings into some of their marketing collateral that they were using in other forms of acquiring customers. Very interesting and very, very valuable. So, again, not every user is going to be the same, but if you focus on the users that really care deeply about your app, you're going to probably find out things that you didn't realize before. And for Inspire, the key opportunities that they discovered were to focus on those power users and to change around their content model. But second, they were able to give feedback to their instructors and push their instructors to create more content around specific workouts so that they could specialize and become leaders in that specific area. And then third, they decided to start providing in-app recommendations to their customers, providing different content to users based on those power user behaviors. Try to create more power users similar to the ones that they already had. And this is so valuable. It's easy to look at the big numbers. It's easy to look at the overall quantities, but sometimes it's just a small subset of your users that are your true fans and the ones that truly love your app. So another question for the audience. Are you currently researching your power users? If not, you definitely should. So let's continue to the fourth conversion killer. And you're probably going to think, how's this conversion? Not communicating. For apps, communication between teams is key. Teamwork really does make the dream work. For a mobile app, it's so cross-functional and you need to be so in sync with multiple people on your team. If you decide to operate entirely in silos, you're probably going to create a lot of bad experiences. And we see this, that more successful app development teams communicate better. You don't want to have everybody in silos. You don't want to have UA in their own tool, engineering in their own tool, support in their own tool, and product in their own tool. It just doesn't work as well. So another one of our enterprise customers, Compass Group, was breaking down silos between their development and marketing teams. They saw that different teams were using completely different tools. Engineering, product, marketing, support, it's all a different tool stack. And there wasn't a central hub for those teams to come together and collaborate. So they decided to dive in on UXCam and send the entire user information and data to one platform so that they could have the user acquisition teams communicate more easily with the product teams about issues, where the product team was able to provide clearer guidance on what they wanted to see resolved to the engineering team. And the engineering team was able to identify elements that were not being tracked more effectively so that they could send that to analytics and BI more efficiently. And they also had to do less tagging because UXCam captures all of the in-app interactions and then provides an API to export it. And then for support teams, whenever they got a customer complaint, they could easily look into what the users were doing and fix it if they could, or send a ticket directly to product or engineering. And this is crucial. This loop needs to be short, needs to be fast, needs to be efficient. The longer it takes, the more users have a bad experience. So, in particular for Compass, this was truly revolutionary, and they did some really cool things. They decided, for example, to link network traces to session IDs for phone calls. So when somebody comes in via phone, they could look into UXCam to see what had happened for that user most recently, and then give a really good contextual recommendation to that customer. And using that same session, if it was a technical issue, they could simply forward it directly to the right team, and it would be resolved by the next update. That's really cool, but it's key to be able to collaborate effectively within your teams to create those great user experiences and to not lose the customers. So, to recap, let's go right into it. Number one, don't botch that first impression. It's so important. Just make it right. Number two, don't add friction to your key user paths. There's a lot of different things that your users are doing, but there's a few key user paths that you want to focus on and really optimize for. Then conversion killer number three, don't treat every user the same. They're not. They just aren't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Conversion killer number four, don't work in silos. Collaborate with your team, and you can fix real user issues a lot faster. Great. So those are some of the conversion killers that our customers experienced. But I would really love to share with you really briefly, and I won't spend a lot of time, on how that works in UXCam. So let me just hop on over and show you real quick. So all of these things that our customers are doing, like how do they do it? Let me just walk you through it really quickly. It's pretty straightforward. And I'll show you the core of how it works right here. We can go right into individual experiences or sessions of users. Then I can click on the replay. It will show me everything that that user did within the app. Every tap they took, every scroll, every event. On the right-hand side, you can see what they tapped and the events and their metadata. You can even see the entire user property, and you can send any number of events, properties in here as well. But in this case, we also capture the crash for this user that happened at the end. And then I can go back into the replay. And if I want to have my engineering team fix this, all I need to do is click on share session. Or if there's multiple, I can share multiple in one go. It's pretty cool. But I also mentioned about focusing on those power users. And let's just zoom in on a user with over 60 sessions. I can see everything that they did in the app, every time that they logged in, screens they visited, crashes, race taps, and UI freezes. I can see how they navigated through this app. And I can see where in the world they were when they used it. Obviously, that's one way of analyzing your users, but you can also analyze them quantitatively through analytics. And in this case, we're looking at different types of events. And I'd like to focus in this case on a rage tap, which is when somebody repeatedly taps the same area on the screen, which is a great indicator of frustration. And I can just click on that particular segment, and it will immediately take me to all of the sessions with a rage tap. And then I can click on this, and it will jump me directly to the point where that user was rage tapping. Aside from that, we also have heat maps. And for every screen that you decide to tag or that's automatically tagged, we capture and combine 14 different types of heat maps for different gestures, rage taps, or unresponsive gestures that you can then use to analyze and identify frustrations for your users. On top of that, we also allow you to analyze how your users are navigating through the app, through screen flow. From the launch all the way to the end, you can see what they're doing and where they're dropping off. But if you have predefined objectives, you can also go into the funnels and analyze from there. And then you can click on the drop-offs that you would like to investigate, or even segment them further. And it doesn't even stop there. For your engineering teams, we also capture crashes, handle exceptions, and UI freezes that let them summarize and dive in on the different issues your customers are facing so that they can immediately go from the top of the stack directly into the individual user's experience with all of the metadata and all of the things they need to resolve those customer frictions as quickly as possible. So that's a little bit about UXCam, and it's pretty cool, but let's stop with this and then leave it open to any kind of questions that you might have, and we'll respond to those in the chat.